Why use a mini nuke? The key thing is it's the amount of bees that a mini nuke uses. You use about a cupful of bees to put into the mini nuke, and we'll show you later how we go about it. If you're queen rearing using nukes, then you're using sort of half a colony of bees, or so at the beginning of the season you're using about 3 frames of bees. Later in the season 4, 5 or 6 frames of bees, so half a brood box almost. So half a brood box of bees as opposed to a cupful of bees, then it's very, very economical using mini nukes, and that's why you do it. The 3 types of mini nuke we've got here is on the right hand side is the Apidea, and you'll be seeing us using the Apidea most of the time. This is a Chinese copy, I suppose, is the best way to describe it. It is normally white in colour, and we bought a sort of about 25, 30 of these, the Chinese ones, and the comparison in cost is they're half the price. The downfall of these ones in particular is the fact that it's not such a high grade polystyrene. Bees can't chew that, or when they do, they don't make much damage. With this one, with the Chinese one, because it's a lighter polystyrene, when the bees chew it, they make holes all over the place, and particularly around the entrance. And the difficulty with that comes that when you've made the mini nuke up, you put it into a cool, dark place for about 3 or 4 or 5 days. And during that period of time with the Chinese ones, then the bees will often chew out, and then they'll get out, and then that basically is a complete waste of time. So that's a copy, but so the advantage of them is they're cheap, and if you use them for just 1 season, then they'll be absolutely fine. But I use these mini nukes over and over and over again. So these are about 5 years or so old, and these ones are struggling. And then this one is I think it's a German copy. It's slightly larger. It takes again, a cupful of bees is absolutely fine. You've got your food compartment at the back, and then these frames are sort of almost a little bit like a top bar hive, really. The bees have less chance or less inclination to abscond from the larger boxes. If they're all of a similar makeup, really. So starting with the Apidea, then you've got a cover board on there, and then this little hole here, and that's where you will either run in the virgin queen or put a queen cell down and in and through there, and the queen cell just fits in really neatly there. And then what you do is the lid goes back on. You can see there's a little cutout there, so everything's been thought through really, really well. So that then holds back there, and then you put the top back on. So that's how the virgin queen or the queen cell is put in. And then these frames are made up by putting a sort of like a starter strip, which is a bit of wireless foundation in there. And then you run hot wax in and around the edges to hold it in place. Then you run a little starter, almost like a starter strip down on either side, and then the bees will build out this foundation, and then they'll run it down the sides as well using the hot wax strip that I put in there. So that's 1, 2 and 3 in there. And then at the back of this one is the feeder box, which you'll see I will load it with fondant, and we'll do that later. Okay, so that's the Apidea. So when you're putting it together, before you put the bees in, check that everything is set up correctly. So now if I put that over the top, then you'll see that that's not lined up correctly. So what you have to make sure is that with that little hole lines up with that frame. The front frame doesn't matter, but it's those two, the two back frames, that it's really important. Because once it's full of bees, the last thing you want to be doing is trying to take the cover off or anything like that, because all the bees will escape. So you don't want to be doing that. You want to have everything absolutely sorted. Now, at the front, this is your entrance here. You can see I've got a pin. The pin is both to hold the entrance down, otherwise the bees will escape, guaranteed. So it goes in the side like that. And when the bees are in there, they're to hold it up and stop it from closing. On the front here is a little queen excluder. Okay, that's the queen excluder. And that just goes in there like that. And then you hold it in with a pin, otherwise the bees will push against it and then it'll come out, and then you'll lose the queen, particularly when she's mated and she wants to, she'll abscond. So if you have a queen excluder there, that stops the mated queen from absconding. So that's the entrance sliding on the front, and then what you want to make sure, so you hold the queen excluder in place with a pin like that. There, that holds it in place. And then the sliding door here, you want to hold it up, and you do that again with a pin. So you just put the pin in there like that, and that'll stop it closing. Otherwise, if you don't have that in there, it will close in and then it'll trap all the bees inside. So that's the Apidea. And then going on to the Chinese one, it's the same basic principle. So you've got a feed compartment at the back, and this has just got some fondant in it in the blue wrap. And then the frames there, and again, the orientation is important because that's how the queen cell goes in. Queen cell goes in through that gap there. Okay, with these frames, you can have either way round. You can't take those frames and put them in an Apidea because the dimensions are different. The feed box on these doesn't come out. But again, same principle, sliding front, and you can see, if you look just down there, the bees have had a chew in there, look. And so we've repaired it with a bit of hot plastic from a glue gun, and that's done a perfectly adequate repair. And the same applies, pins to hold the door up or down, and queen excluder on the front and things like that. And then this one, again, exactly the same. They don't normally come with a perspex cover, so we've made the cover, and we made the cover for that one as well. And then the queen cell goes in, and this is like a mini top bar hive. So we put strips, wax strip across there, cut timber down, and then the bees build the foundation down themselves, build the comb down themselves. Okay, and then the feeder compartment is at the back. The great thing with the Apidea is it comes with an extension on the brood box. So one of the problems, as I was saying earlier on, or one of the difficulties, one of the challenges, is that the bees will, once a queen is laying and she's laid up on all three frames, then she will abscond with her little colony. Off they go. So to get round that, take the feeder out. You can put another couple of frames in for her to lay on or lay in, like so. And then you put the extension on the top like that. and then put another couple of frames in the back on that. So you've then got that, and then what you can do on top of that to keep them well fed is you go and put a top feeder on like that with a queen excluder, and then this feeder, it doesn't have to be fondant, it can be syrup. That's your lid. And there we are. This is how I overwinter my Apideas. So what I'll do for the season is I'll try and do 3 or 4 runs in the Apideas. And then when I do my last run of breeding stock, then that's when I overwinter my little colonies in the Apideas, and this is what I'll use for overwintering. So I'll put the brood box extension and then the feeder on top of that, and then they will last very, very happily over winter. So for feeding them, to start off with, then I use the ambrosia fondant. This, and the reason I use the fondant is that when you're loading the Apidea with bees, you turn it on its head and you slide the bottom out. Just let me demonstrate. So when you're loading the bees in, and we'll do this, you'll see it done later, you slide the bottom out, and then you put the bees in. If you had sugar syrup in your feeder, then you turn it upside down, all the sugar syrup will come out. That's why you put fondant in. Then after a while, after the bees are all settled in and everything like that, they've eaten the fondant, so five days, a week or so later, you can then put sugar syrup in, no problems at all. Just got to make sure that you put some plastic netting or something like that in the feeder box so that the bees don't drown in it. So a bit of plastic netting in there, no problem at all. And it's got a little queen excluder there to stop the virgin queen going in as well. The thing with Apideas is that I find they're very, very good at the beginning of the season, but then later in the season, when you're trying to do, so for instance, second week of July or beginning of July, when the wasps start to become a problem, the colonies find it really quite difficult to look after themselves, particularly newly established colonies. So if the Apidea has been up and running for a month or so, something like that, then they're able to look after themselves and they're a strong colony. Whereas if you're putting starting a new Apidea in sort of July time, then the wasps can be a real problem, which is why I stop using Apideas here at Trelabe, and I use using the Apideas down at Eden, because the wasp problem isn't so bad down there, whereas it's a particular problem up here at Trelabe, particularly as the summer progresses.